and welcome to this week's episode of the Goodrum Show with me, Chris Goodrum. As per usual, a big thank you to everybody that watched, commented, liked last week's episode of the show. Got a couple of thumbs down as well, which was a bit of a surprise. But then I'm assuming that it was probably my views on Jura that probably did that. But you know, I'm not going to apologise for that. That's my opinion, and you know, I'll kind of stick with that, shall we say. And of course, as they say, you can't please all of the people all of the time. So, but as long as the bulk of you guys are enjoying what I do, my reviews, then you know, I'm just gonna keep on going, as they say. Anyway, so to this week's episode of the show. As you can probably see from the title page, it's a little different to my usual title pages, and that's because today's episode of the show is a little bit different as well. It's a first, as far as I'm aware, certainly for a YouTube tasting, a brand new concept, I suppose, for want of a better word. A brand new series of bottlings by a new company called the Distillers Art Ltd. Now, a big thank you to Ewan Thompson, the sales director, who dropped in, I think it was late in February, with the samples and explained the whole idea behind the company. And so the company is called the Distillers Art Ltd. Their initial release is just 3 bottlings, so it's going to be a fairly shorter than usual episode of the show. And the twist is art. Now, I mean, this is nothing new in reality. I mean, you know, there have been numerous bottles of whiskey released over the years where an artist has been commissioned to produce a label, or gone in to photograph various bits of the distillery and packaged it all up with a luxury bottling. So the combination, or the sort of correlation between art and whiskey, is nothing particularly new. Now, what is interesting about this concept is that not only do you get obviously a bottle of whiskey, but you get a limited edition signed print by the artist, and obviously each bottling has got a different outrun, and so therefore, you know, each print matches the number of the bottles, if you see what I mean. Now, so there's 2 artists so far that have made labels for the and prints for this particular series called the Spirit of Art. Now, it's one is a chap called Caol Wheatley. And the other one is a chap called Brian McPhee. Now, I'm terribly sorry, but I don't know either of those artists at all. I mean, a number of you may well know or remember, I may well have mentioned that sort of back prior to getting into the whiskey industry, I was attempting to make it as an artist, shall we say. I did art college in the late 90s, and I had some illustration work in magazines, and some commission pieces, but my influences were completely different, and that's to the sort of artwork that these 2 particular artists do. I mean, you know, I was obviously more into the sort of fantasy art and artists, I suppose, like sort of Damien Hirst and Joel Peter Witkin, Robert Mapplethorpe, and Alan Jones, who, shall we say, probably looked at the slightly darker side of things, shall we say. I guess the reason I never kind of really made it in the art world is there was a lot of bollocks basically talked in the art world, and I remember one of my lecturers going, "I don't really know what to do with you. You just like drawing pretty little pictures, don't you?" Well, I thought, well, yeah, I suppose so. Pretty is obviously a subjective comment here, but anyway, so the 2 artists, like I said, a chap called Caol Wheatley and Brian McPhee. So obviously, not knowing anything about the artists, I had to do a bit of research, and apparently Caol Wheatley is a very well-known painter, does a lot of landscape work, started a company, or the Perfect Circle Art, which was Scotland's largest commercial art studio. His work, his oil paintings, I believe he tends to do most of, tends to sell between about 300 and 500 quid, and his prints tend to go for around about 100. So what you're getting is obviously with these bottlings a limited edition print and the whiskey, so you have to take into consideration with regards to the price of what you're getting, if you follow my rationale with that. Now, the other artist, Brian McPhee, apparently studied at Glasgow School of Art in between 79 and 83, and was apparently, he's more, from looking at his work, more into figurative and abstract work rather than landscape, but obviously he's painted a landscape of the Caol distillery. Is apparently more well known for being a guitarist in a band called The Big Dish. Now, I've never heard of them either, terribly sorry about that, but obviously, as you well know, my musical tastes are somewhat different, should we say. So anyway, like I said, now when I obviously come to sort of the conclusion of these whiskies, you obviously have to bear in mind that they are more expensive than the whiskey themselves, if you follow my logic. For example, the first one we'll be looking at is a 10-year-old Benrinnes. Now, on the shelf, this is going to go for £141, and you're probably going to go for a 10-year-old whiskey that much. But, like I said, bear in mind, if you're into the artist and you're into sort of buying limited edition prints, you're talking about 100 quid for one of Nicole's prints. So therefore, being sort of obvious, if the print is 100 quid, the whiskey is 41 quid. Now, that's more realistic for a 10-year-old Benrinnes in reality. So, like I said, when I kind of like sum these up, like I said, bear in mind that it's not just the whiskey you're buying. Anyhow, so like I said, it's obviously more about whether you're into the particular artist's work, and so I mean, I guess a number of people probably will be, and so they will see the value in each release. So anyway, but of course, as with everything, the proof is in the juice, shall we say now. And as far as I'm aware, one of the guys, or the guy behind the whiskey side of things, who I didn't make a note of his name, and I'm terribly sorry about that, was an ex-Diageo man, so obviously has the contacts to get hold of, one would assume, reasonably good quality casks. So, but anyway, I think that's a brief intro, well, probably a bit longer than a brief intro really, isn't it? Like I said, they have a website, you can find out all that information on their website, and obviously, as far as I'm concerned, what really matters is how good the juice is, and that's what we're going to find out. So let's take a look at the lineup. Right, so as I said earlier, the first bottling we'll be looking at is a 10-year-old Benrinnes. It was a single bourbon hoggy, 306652, distilled in 2009, bottled in February of this year at 55.5%, and it yielded 316 bottles and prints. Bottling number 2 we'll be looking at is a 10-year-old Linkwood. This was a sherry hoggy, 310724, again distilled in 2009, bottled in February of this year at 59.2%, and this actually only yielded 285 bottles and prints. And the final bottling we'll be looking at is a 13-year-old Caol. This is the artist Brian McPhee has done his art for the label. It's a bourbon barrel, 300684, distilled in 2007, again bottled in February of this year at 55.4%, and yielded just 223 bottles. So that's the lineup. I didn't think, I wanted to sort of obviously focus on just their releases. I believe in the pipeline there is going to be a fairly normal cask strength series and a 46% series, like pretty much most of the independents do, but for now this is the inaugural release. So let's kick off with Benrinnes. Right, okay, so let's see what the nose gives us on this end, shall we? yeah, that's actually quite a nice nose. Now Benrinnes can be a bit hit and miss, and this is actually really quite nice, quite high toned, very citric, very grassy, very spey. It's got quite a noticeable alcohol prickle. It's a little bit of oily barley, touch of toasted oak, a bit of vanilla. I mean, I would go as far as saying this is a very good Benrinnes. The alcohol is, like I said, it's very noticeable. I mean, it's 55.5, which I wouldn't have expected it to be quite so noticeable, but you know, I'll keep a little bit and see what happens when I put a little drop of water with it. That will probably open it up. Anyway, let's see what that's like. That's quite tight, obviously. Showing a little bit more oak to start off with, a little bit more vanilla, more barley, slightly rounder, fuller, oilier in character, less of the sort of citrus, less of the grass, but it does have a pleasant grassiness on the mid palate. It's obviously masked, the alcohol is masking the finish, but again, you know, it progresses quite pleasantly, and it's more kind of, I suppose, typical Benrinnes in that it's slightly fuller and slightly oilier than the nose would suggest. But you know, I mean, I honestly think that's a pleasant bottling. So let's put a little drop of water with it and see if that opens it up a little bit. It's brought out a little bit more of the oiliness, a little bit less of the citrus. I'm getting more white fruit now, more barley. There's a touch of licorice root, anise possibly. There's less oak, so we're looking more spirit character. And again, I don't think sort of Benrinnes is ever going to be the type of whiskey that's going to, you know, blow you away with its level of complexity, but so that's nice, that's pleasant. And like I said, you know, it's going on the shelf at 141 quid, which yes is expensive, but like I said, bear in mind that in reality you're only paying about 40 quid for the whiskey, and well, that's fair, isn't it, I guess. Anyway, let's see what the pal's like. Softer, juicier, a little bit more oak character, a little bit less of the grass and the citrus, although that does kind of come through nicely on the finish. It's certainly got more of a minerality on the middle, and it's really well balanced. And you know, you're getting the sort of like the richness and the sort of slightly oily spirit character with a little bit of citrus, a little bit of grass, a little bit of minerality. So you know, overall, you know, if that was presented to you at 40 quid, I don't think that's too shabby. So good start. Right, okay, so let's move on to the Linkwood. So 10-year-old cherry hoggy. A lot of sherry, a lot of dried fruit, herbal, oloroso, wood smoke, green nuts, touch of cinnamon. It's a sherry. Well, it's a sherry monster at the end of the day. I mean, it's not a sort of tear your head off roaring sherry monster, but it's pretty much all sherry. I don't get any Linkwood character. I mean, yes, it has a sort of like a richness to it, but again, this is not, as you well know, a sort of a style of whiskey that I particularly warm to. Now, there's no off notes. This is not no sulphur. No, this is not an iffy, dodgy sherry hoggy whatsoever. So obviously, if that type of whiskey is what appeals to you, then this is the sort of thing you'll like. Incidentally, this is going to sit on the shelf at 146 quid. So again, doing the maths, you're talking about 46 quid for the whiskey. So, and who knows, if you like sherry whiskies, sherry linkwoods, then it's not bad. Let's see what the pant's like. A little lighter on the palate. Alcohol is well contained. Again, pretty much all sherry, so sort of dried fruit, citrus peel, raisin, walnut, pleasant spiciness. It's got a nice spicy finish with a little bit of mouth-watering citrus, which it gives it some balance. Again, no real distillery character at all. It's all about the sherry cask. But again, as I said, if that is the sort of thing that floats your boat, then fine. There's a little bitterness in the aftertaste, but again, nothing to get sort of bent out of shape about. I will put a little drop of water with it. I don't think it actually needs it, even though it's 59.2. It just goes to show you the vagaries of Scotch whisky. 55%, and it's really noticeable. 59%, and it's all about how well contained the alcohol content is at the end of the day. So. Now that makes the nose quite sweeter. I'm getting granulated sugar now, and it's coating those kind of dried fruits. Less herbal, maybe a little bit more buttery, a little bit more coffee possibly. I mean, again, it's a pleasant nose if you like sherry whiskies. I mean, maybe there's a touch of distillery character sort of just coming through. Maybe I'm searching for it, maybe I'm imagining it, but either way, it's just all still pretty much about the cask. Let's see what the pant's like. Again, softer, sweeter, a little simpler, I will say, but again, pleasant sherry whiskey, and like I said, it's not the style that's going to really set my pants on fire. It has to be said, but the quality is good. So can't argue with that, I suppose. And finally, let's move on to the Caol. So 13 years old and bottled at 55.4%. Let's see what the nose gives us on this end, shall we? Quite oily, dusty, sooty, very much in the modern style of Caol. A little bit of white fruit, salt. It's got a little bit of a freshness, a little bit of white fruit, a little bit of bog myrtle. It's not a huge peat monster. It's actually pretty well balanced. It's, I would say, moderately peated. I mean, it's certainly not the heaviest of peated Caolas I've ever come across, but as we well know, Caol doesn't really need the peat. The quality of the spirit, as you probably know from the unpeated releases, is really very, very good. And let's put it this way, you can't really go wrong with Caol, can you, at the end of the day? Now, this is, and is often the way with Caol. I don't really understand how sometimes it can be ridiculously expensive, and at other times, some independents can bottle it for, a more modest amount, shall we say. So now this sits on the shelf at 182 quid. Now, I'm guessing, now, I mean, from what I've seen of the artist's stuff that's for sale, it doesn't seem to charge as much as Nicole Wheatley. So you are paying a little bit more for the whiskey. So I mean, it's nice. I mean, if we'll, for argument's sake, let's say his stuff sells, his print sells for 80 odd quid, you're looking at about 100 quid for the whiskey, which, anyway, let's see what the pat's like. Quite light in body, but it's got a good length. Sooty, a little bit of sweet fruit, touch of salt. Does get really quite sweet on the aftertaste. In actual fact, you know, I'm getting a sugariness which is quite. I don't normally get that kind of sugariness with Caol. There's some pleasant saltiness. So you know, the balance is okay. It's not too shabby. Again, like most Caol, not a huge amount of oak influence, so it is pretty much all about the spirit, which is good. Let's put a little drop of water with it and see what changes that makes to it. A little sweeter, a little bit more barley, less peat, as is often the case with putting a drop of water with cask strength peated malts. More mossy, herbal. It's an interesting nose. It's probably a little less complex. Certainly by removing the peat, it sort of takes away that sort of dimension to the nose. But you know, it's still a pleasant Caol. Let's see what the pass on that. Again, pleasant, less herbal, less salty, although it has a bit of a salty flourish on the finish, which is quite nice. Again, a little sweeter. There's some almost kind of underripe banana notes, maybe. Sooty, nice sooty aftertaste. It's an okay Caol. It's not the greatest cask of Caol I've ever tasted, yet it's not the worst cask of Caol. It's obviously somewhere in the middle. It's pleasant. Okay, so let's sum today's episode of the show. Firstly, a big thank you to the Distillers Art Ltd for the samples for today's episode of the show. I hope I've you know, not disappointed you with my reviews. And like I said, you know, you have to bear in mind that, you know, you are not just paying for the whiskey, you are paying for the print that comes with the whiskey. And essentially, at the end of the day, it all comes down to whether you're into the artist or not. At the end of the day, I mean, and let's put it this way: you know, if Damien Hirst were doing a bloody a whiskey label, you know, you'd be parting with an arm and a leg to get hold of it, you know, and so you know, they're modestly priced. Okay, so the Benrinnes, I mean, I think, to be honest with you, that to me, and I can't remember how many other tastings where I would say the Benrinnes was the standout bottling. I mean, that has to be pretty much a first. And like I said, you know, it's 141 quid, but bear in mind that you're paying 100 quid for the print and 40 odd quid for the bottle of whiskey. Now, going back to the title page, the image page, I deliberately kind of left it pretty plain because I wanted to sort of show you as much of the art, and it's made up of sort of a composite of the brochure that the Distillers Art kindly sent me, and I wanted to obviously show you what the whole thing looked like. So you have a tube with the whiskey in, then you have an outer tube where the print is housed, and obviously you can put it in a frame and all that kind of stuff. And so, you know, like I said, you're not just buying the whiskey, you're buying the art as well, should we say. The Linkwood, yeah, I mean, it's a sherry monster at the end of the day. It's not my cup of tea. The quality is good. It's clean. There's no off notes. Like I said, whether you think it's worth it or not is all down to whether you like the artist's artwork or not. I mean, you know, I kind of quite like it. You know, like I said, I'm not the world's biggest fan of landscape art, and but you know, I like the Benrinnes one actually. I think it's probably my favourite of the three. And the Caol, it's an average Caol. It's not the world's greatest. It's not the world's worst. At the end of the day, it's 182 quid. It's probably a bit overpriced, if you want my honest opinion. You know, if you can argue that the print is worth 80 odd quid, you know, you're then looking at 100 odd pound for the Whisky, and I think that's probably pushing it a little bit. You know, if this was about the same price as the other two, 140 quid, then, you know, maybe you could say that that probably was worth it. So I think that's a little overpriced for what it actually is, but that's just my personal opinion. At the end of the day, like I said, if you're into sort of Brian McPhee's artwork and his music and all that kind of stuff, you're probably going to buy it, and I'm fine, great. I mean, this is the wonderful thing about this. You know, you're appealing to sort of almost divergent markets. You're appealing to sort of, right, obviously the whiskey drinkers, and you're appealing to the fans of the artists themselves, and hell, you know, I mean, if that helps sales, then why not? You know, I mean, it's all about sort of, you know, getting your product to sort of as many different marketplaces as humanly possible. And you know, I honestly wish the guys behind this, you know, all the best. Personally, I'd be more interested to see their single cask releases without the prints and their 46% range when they eventually do them, because, you know, that's, I think for me, that's the sort of customers that I've got. I don't think I really have the customers that would buy the art, shall we say, and the whiskey. But, you know, I could well be wrong, and I'd be interested to know, you know, you guys, your opinions, you know, because they are quite expensive, and, you know, yeah, I as per always love to hear your opinions. And anyway, so that's this week's episode of the show in the bag. You know, I hope you've enjoyed it. It's different, you know, and hell, you know, we like a bit of difference at the end of the day. So until next time, good afternoon and good Dram.